Hey guys, it's Yuta. So I like reading reviews after watching a film, which I did with Ghost in the Shell. And I found some Japanese reviews pretty interesting, so I'm going to share some of them. But first, let me remind you that many Japanese people seem to have watched the dubbed version with the original anime voice actors, so that might have changed their impressions. Alright, first, let's discuss the cast. And it's interesting because the reviewers almost unanimously loved Major, played by Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson gets 100 points. I also find it perfect that she looks beautiful, but also kind of cute. I'm happy with Johansson's Motoko because her face, fashion, and even the way she walked was just like the anime. Just having Major on the screen makes a huge impact. And I'm surprised that Scarlett Johansson perfectly looked like Major even when she was just wearing a tank top with her black hair. I hear that people say Rinko Kikuchi or Sonoya Mizuno would be a better fit for the role of Major, but after watching the film, I think Scarlett Johansson was the perfect answer. It was actually pretty hard to find negative comments, but of course I did find some negative comments. Major is supposed to be sassy, but she turned out to be the most emotional one. That character development makes me think that they really don't get it. Motoko Kusanagi that I know has a poker face, doesn't change facial expressions often, and rarely shows emotions. But this time, because of her rich facial expressions, she just looked like a normal human being, and I didn't feel like she was Motoko Kusanagi or she had an artificial body. So that was about Major, but on the other hand, people generally didn't like Aramaki, played by Takeshi Kitano. It is equivalent to destroy the material to make Daisuke Aramaki like a cheap yakuza when he's supposed to fight with his intelligence. For some reason, his lines are all in Japanese. It's a bit disappointing that it's hard to understand him. I wish they added Japanese subtitles apart from the English subtitles. So Takeshi Kitano doesn't speak Japanese clearly, so people always complain that it's hard to understand what he's saying. It's absolutely strange that even though he's the only one who speaks Japanese when everyone else speaks English, they can carry on their conversations. Even Kaori Momoi in this film speaks English, so it has to be consistent. So I did some research, and apparently he didn't speak English because he didn't want to put the effort into learning English. But of course there's people who said positive things about him. It was a good job that Takeshi Arakawa's lines were in Japanese. It was better than feeling anxious by his bad English. But there was another Japanese actress who played Major's mother, and people were very happy about her. Kaori Momoi's English is fantastic. Her role is also fantastic. I was touched. Kaori Momoi, who played the mother's role, she immediately presented a magnificent image of an Asian mother as soon as she appeared. As for her, all of her lines were in English, and she marked her presence in a Hollywood film. She was incontestably cool. So that was about the cast. But if you talk about the film overall, the reviews are generally quite positive. For example, on Yahoo Japan Movie, it has 3.52 points out of 5. If you compare this to other Ghost in the Shell movies, you will see that people like this one more or less as much as the other ones. Let me share some comments. People criticized the trailer for the changes such as making Major a different person from Motoko Kusanagi or making a story about revenge. But when I saw the actual film, I was impressed by their angle and interpretation. I think that those changes worked well. I felt that this version made Oshii's difficult story easier to understand, added Hollywood interpretation, and created a storyline that would surprise fans. This is a hardcore fans film created by a hardcore fan for hardcore fans, because as a hardcore fan myself, I felt overwhelming love and obsession about Ghost in the Shell. It's really the live-action version of the anime, and full of otaku's love. But if you watched it without seeing the original anime, you probably wouldn't be excited that much because it would be a normal science fiction film. But of course, there's negative comments as well. The unfashionable visuals that reminds me of the cyberpunk 30 years ago. The storyline that is just boring. And Takeshi's monotone acting that could cause a headache. I think the way they interpreted the first Oshi's film was wrong. I think the film talked about the concerns about having memories outside one's own body, and Motoko Kusanagi's pain and the choice of her future in such a society. What bothers me watching American movies sometimes is this. Don't shove your message in the audience's face. Ghost in the Shell doesn't portray the mechanized society as something that you can summarize with words like future or individuality. But overall, people seem to have enjoyed the film, and it's definitely not an epic failure like Dragon Ball Evolution. And if you're wondering why nobody is mentioning whitewashing, it's because Japan is a very Asian country, and Japan has plenty of TV shows and films that represent people who are Asian and Japanese. So unless you're familiar with the American context, you simply don't have that perspective. And if you think that Japanese people are exceptionally accepting when it comes to this film, well, it has 6.8 stars on IMDb, so that's not necessarily the case. I was also expecting that the film was going to be really bad, and I watched it, and I was surprised that it was actually pretty enjoyable. I'm pretty sure that the anime versions and the manga are deeper and more interesting, and the film actually made me want to check out those other versions. So maybe this film is at least a good introduction to a casual viewer like myself. But do you know what you can do to understand the original and the anime versions better? Learning Japanese. So if you want to learn Japanese with me, I can send you some free lessons by email, so click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta. Otherwise, I can see you guys soon. Ciao ciao!